live.
2, 1. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Daily Fantasy Insiders TV show, sponsored by FantasyElite, the app that you can get in the App Store. My name is David Kitchen, a.k.a. Soccer Dave. You can call me Davis Maddock on today's show. I'm so swaggy, bruh. So with us today, we have Davis Maddock. And Davis, what are you today? Are you Gronk?
No, it's a Randy Moss jersey, but I'm good. I'm not as cranky as I was yesterday.
Okay.
Oh, Davis, give us your Tom Brady stat that you love dealing with Gronkowski and Randy Moss.
For his career, Tom Brady has been better throwing to Rob Gronkowski than Randy Moss by I think a full 1.5 yards in adjusted yards per attempt. So he threw a lot of pass attempts to both those guys. So that's a really substantial number. So
last week was definitely a tough week for the Gronk truthers. Just a rough week for them all. Really rough week for daily fantasy leaguers who played Colt McCoy's tight end. We advised on this show to not do that, and we're moving forward with our pockets on swole.
Dude,
honestly,
that was like channeling Davis Maddock.
That was.
There. I loved it.
Pockets on swole definitely needs to be a hashtag.
Well, the thing is, legitimately, if you just played the Dolphins defense and Rob Gronkowski on DraftKings, that was all you needed to cash double ups. The rest of my lineups really weren't very good on DraftKings, and I was fine just based off of those two, because Gronk was so great.
My defense and kicker combined got me 6 points on FanDuel, so that was cool.
Did you get Robbie Golded?
No, I had to go with the narrative street of Chandler Catanzaro. Except it was a reverse narrative street because they didn't even let him attempt the first 53-yard field goal because they didn't want to end his streak.
Oh, so the narrative street backfired on you.
Oh, I'm a narrative street noob, so I didn't take all narrative street angles into consideration when rostering my kicker last week.
Yeah. Oh, man. Last week was I feel like I was talking about this with Drew and Peter and Al. There just hasn't been that week where you feel like you're on top of every play that does right, but you don't have the right combo to have that really big week. And so you have guys like Michael Floyd that just ruin your lineups. And that's kind of how it was last week.
Evan had to make it worse on Twitter, too. He tweeted yesterday, and I used this in my write-up, that Michael Floyd, in his 4 games with Carson Palmer this year, has 3 games with at least 100 yards or a touchdown, and then he has the 0-0-0 week. And so I used that in my write-up because I also think that Floyd is a defensible play, especially for GPPs, again, this week. But Evan definitely stuck that knife in and twisted it a little bit to everyone who got burnt with Floyd last week.
That was not
just sticking to the facts, man.
Yep. No, I can't fault you for that.
Well, Evan was right there with you on the Jerick McKinnon train, so he's got to take a little bit of heat for that. And
I also threw some heavy shade at the McKinnon is bad people in my write up. I went and found a Vine where he was incredible. I definitely made sure that everyone. Go ahead, Evan.
It's a reminder that sometimes players play well in games, and they just don't have monster fantasy weeks. I mean, I thought it was coming in the second half. The Vikings had a lead in the second half. Buccaneers were doing nothing. I felt like it was coming, but it just kind of never came together. He does still get pulled on pretty much every third down for Matt Asiata. He's going to lose short yardage carries to Matt Asiata. So in all likelihood, he's going to need to hit home runs to get touchdowns, which probably makes him more of a GPP play than a cash game play, I would think.
Yeah, although I will say this, and this surprised me when I went to go do my write-up this week, is he actually ran one more pass route than Matt Asiata last week. So it's sort of one of those things where, Matt Asiata ended up being the guy who got the checkdowns and McKinnon didn't. But, I mean, if you just look at...
No, but I'm talking about if you actually watch the game. Like, Asiata would go in the game on third down.
Uh-huh.
That's all I'm talking about. I totally agree that they want to use McKinnon in the passing game. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, but I think that last week was sort of it was just really bad all around for his fantasy numbers, just the way in which the coaching staff called the game. Not that it can't happen again, but I still like him this week as an option.
I like him this week too. I mean, the Redskins are playing on a short week. They gave up almost 8 yards a carry to DeMarco Murray, Joseph Randle, and Lance Dunbar on Monday night. They're coming off a big, huge win, like their best win, since the Joe Gibbs era. They're primed for a letdown. The Vikings are back at home. I mean, I like McKinnon too this week.
All right, so let's talk about roster construction to start out. Because, I mean, and I'm not saying McKinnon's a bad play. I do agree with Evan that he's probably a GPP play, and here is why. Jeremy Hill.
Oh, it's Jeremy Hill week, big baby.
It is.
So I have to perform many unspeakable tasks to the whole Fantasy Insiders team.
Tuttle in the Skype chat was saying he would do this and do that if Gio was out. This was on Sunday. And sure enough, Gio is out. So
well, and it's not like I touched on it in my write-up, and I saw Evan kind of along the same train of thought in his analysis. And the fact it's not necessarily that it's a great matchup. It's just that we're getting a talented back, really for cheap, for maybe the first time this year where we're going to get a back that does it all. He's going to get the goal line carry. Yeah, Nile. What week was that? But Nile wasn't really cheap.
He was 6,000 on FanDuel, and
I thought he was in the 7,000 range. But regardless, Hill is dirt cheap this week, 4,000. The only thing on DraftKings is you don't necessarily need him because you have LaShawn McCoy at like 5,200. But 4,000 on DraftKings, 5,200 on FanDuel. We haven't had a week or a situation like this before where we're going to get a true workhorse back that's going to get a ton of carries, is capable in the passing game. So I'm excited, which means it's probably just going to end up horrible.
Yeah, I mean, he does have a good matchup. Here's where it comes with lineup construction, though. When I've been constructing teams, with Hill, I mean, last night was different. I put Hill and Ingram in some lineups, and I found myself like paying up for defense, and when I was playing on FanDuel, paying up for kicker just because I had that extra salary left. This week or on Sunday, I feel like with the quarterback options, even if you go Gronk, you go Hill, and it allows you to play a stud running back. And that's why you don't need necessarily the McKinnon or anybody else who's kind of on the fringe. So let's start there as far as if you can play one stud running back this week to pair with Hill, who is it? Evan, we'll start with you.
Well, I think there are three guys to look at. One is Marshawn Lynch against Oakland. The other one is LaShawn McCoy at Houston. And the third guy is Ronnie Hillman against New England.
Okay.
This stole my three.
In that order?
That was exactly my three.
Did Evan just say DeMarco or no?
No.
Okay, well, yeah, he's always in the... I don't care who they play.
No, I mean, I totally agree with that. It's just... they're a top 3 run defense, But I mean, you can't argue against DeMarco Murray at this point. I want to talk about with Davis. How talented do you think that Jeremy Hill is? Because I watch him play, and I think he's like a smoother Eddie Lacy.
I think that's not a bad comp at all. I wrote an article for Roto World this offseason about I wrote about 5 league-winning running backs. One of them was Bishop Sankey, so you guys can go ahead.
Yeah, but you nailed Lamar Miller, though, Davis, so give yourself some credit.
I had Lamar Miller, I had Niall Davis, and Jeremy Hill was one of the other guys. I think that Jeremy Hill is a good fit for this offense, and you're such a Gio Bernard truther, and I love it, because I wasn't huge on Gio coming out, and he's been good, but if you look at a lot of the...
He hasn't been very good.
He's been okay, Evan.
He's been okay.
He's been okay, but if you look at the pass catching,
he's a scat back.
He's a scat back. Jeremy Hill has actually been pretty good as a wide receiver or as a pass catcher. His like workout stuff isn't like the range where you're like, oh my god, I can't wait for this guy to get on the field the way it is with Nile and McKinnon. But he also wasn't bad in anything. Like none of his workout stuff would trigger you to say, well, he's lacking in this area. And I think honestly, the most important thing for young running backs is size, being big and strong, because it just means that in those games when the starter gets knocked out, he can handle 25 touches no problem at all.
Yeah, he's really smooth in the passing game. I mean, he's excellent. He's caught 13 of his 15 targets this year. He's averaging 10.1 yards per reception, which is much better than Giovanni Bernard, who is known as a passing game back. I mean, when you watch him play, he moves the pile. And he's done this repeatedly in the regular season when he's gotten opportunities. He did it in the preseason, where there will be a pile of players, and Jeremy Hill is still churning yards. I mean, that's shit that gets me excited. And I was talking to Fantasy Mansion, Matt Kelly on Twitter about this, and he is kind of down on Jeremy Hill's, his workout numbers. And I mean, I understand that, but I sort of wonder if, does that always apply to a power back who, weighs 230 pounds and his role is not to average, 5.5 yards a carry. I mean, his role is to move the chains, and you give it to him again, and he gains 4, and you give it to him again, and he gains 3, and you give it to him again, and he gets 6. I mean, he can sustain an entire offensive drive almost by himself. And that's not something that people that some backs who have great workout metrics like CJ Spiller can do. CJ Spiller could rip off a 75-yard run, but he can't do some things that Jeremy Hill can do. So I don't know. I think that's an interesting thing.
Workout numbers for running backs in general don't matter as much because it's a position in fantasy that's predicated off opportunity. You just have to be good enough. Like Stephen Ridley's workout numbers suck, but he's been great when given the opportunity because he's good enough. And I mean, Hill has some things that and you'll almost never hear me say this, but that don't necessarily show up in the workout numbers because he has above average vision. And like just so far looking at his stuff on Pro Football Focus in terms of like broken tackles and stuff, like those are the things that bigger running backs can do. And just in general, like I like big running backs. Like that more than anything to me, like size and durability matter at the running back position.
Good stuff.
Okay, so are we done with the Jeremy Hill conversation?
Let's talk about his matchup. How about Tuttle? Does his matchup worry you at all? I mean, I think it's a legit run D. I really do.
I think it is too. It doesn't worry me as much just because the volume's going to be there. I mean, I think it's a legit run D, but game flow should dictate plenty of workload. He's going to get the goal line opportunities, and that's enough to make me feel safe with it, especially at his price point.
Does AJ Green coming back help him?
Yeah. I mean, their offense should be less condensed.
Right.
Mm-hmm. What about ownership percentage? And then we can move off this.
He's going to be
heavily owned.
I mean, it might be one of the biggest of the season.
I saw him on Thursday night. I got him at 14.6% on FanDuel in a tournament, but I would guess that he's 33%.
I gotta give some big credit to Michael Leone on this. On the show yesterday, he basically said that he was getting in Thursday games with Jeremy Hill because he thought it was a huge opportunity to get Jeremy Hill at a reasonable ownership percentage. And I didn't make that move. I didn't end up playing any Thursday games at all because I didn't like the spot for either New Orleans or Carolina. I just wanted to give some credit to Mike on that.
He was around 33% in the double ups that I entered. I did find that the double ups were a lot. There were not as many hills. There were no hills. But the heads up, when I posted heads up, the people that took them, or I guess it was Ingram, because you can't see the hills. There was a lot of Ingrams last night. a ton of Ingrams. So I imagine there's going to be some Hills as well. But I think if he was 32%, 33% in those double ups yesterday with not many people, well, some people not knowing like if Gio was going to be out for certain, if that becomes the case, I mean, he's going to be like 60% owned.
I'll be interested in seeing the difference between FanDuel and DraftKings. I kind of alluded to it earlier, but I'm going to play him on DraftKings because I do like him quite a bit, but just how soft their pricing is, it's not something you have to force into your lineup. I mean, LaShawn McCoy's at 5,200. There's plenty of other backs kind of around that lower price point. The wide receiver prices are really suppressed this week. So I think it'll be interesting to see the percentage
wide receiver
ownage.
is awful this week.
It is.
It's like
so
a bunch
bad.
of mid-tier guys of like that I don't feel good about, like Andre Johnson and Ruben Randall.
It's so bad that I wrote up Mike Wallace. That's how bad it is.
That's the thing.
I got Wallace everywhere.
Yeah,
He's
I think
undeniably
you guys convinced
great
me on
play.
it.
Evan, what about your boy Ruben Randall this week?
Oh, I wish that Vontae Davis was
That's
not
the
playing.
thing.
Yep, that ruins it.
Oh, I hate that so much.
For those with really just want to take a risk in a GPP, Preston Parker in that Giants passing game.
Whoa.
That's the
thing. No.
That's a thing.
It's
Tuttle,
Spider-Man's little brother.
no way, dude.
That's a thing.
Tuttle, no way.
As a GPP, he's gonna have the best matchup. He saw he saw I think close to 70% of the snaps last week. I mean, it's obviously a very, very high risk play, but he's got the best matchup.
Please,
I got
truth.
it. Okay, Dan. Dan, do you remember the second week that Evan was on the show and we played that game where David found a bunch of obscure players and tried to get us to name which team they were on? Preston Parker belongs on that list of obscure guys who are fringe NFL players, and you couldn't name who they played for.
I'm not saying he's a good player.
If you want to take a flyer on someone in that offense, do it on Beckham. And you know how much that pains me to say.
I mean, he's obviously the better play, but he's also priced significantly more expensive.
Cut to cut to Preston Parker being on the millionaire maker.
Yep, it's gonna happen.
Yeah, definitely.
I actually like Larry Donnell from that game. Colts have allowed 6 most fantasy points to tight ends. He is a guy that the Giants have to get going with Victor Cruz out. Really nice over-under, second biggest of the week. Had 7 targets in their last game. So I like Donnell.
Yep.
As far as the coach speak about Ruben Randall playing more in the slot,
Does Vontae Davis shadow, or does he play one side, Evan?
It's all RCB.
Okay. So I'll probably toss Randall in on some Millie Maker teams because the rest of the Indianapolis defense is atrocious, just not very good at all. We saw it last week when Vontae Davis went out, everything went downhill, and Big Ben was just tossing touchdowns left and right. But I don't know. What do you think about playing Randall and Cash's price point anyways, assuming that he'll move around, and also that Vontae Davis might be hampered a little bit by this injury?
Mm-hmm. I've got him and Andre Johnson in my cash games.
Okay, someone needs to talk to Soccer Dave about Andre Johnson.
Well, you're going to talk to him about how you want to play DeAndre Hopkins over Andre Johnson.
Are you worried about the injury?
What injury?
To Andre Johnson.
What do you think that Andre Johnson is done or what?
I don't think that he's done. I think that he's fine, but I think that if you want the play in this game for daily fantasy, I think it's obviously DeAndre Hopkins. Everyone's going to make a big deal about the target discrepancy between the two of them, but Hopkins is still handling a 20% market share in that offense. So it's not like he doesn't get the targets, and he has 23 less targets than Johnson and has more yards and more touchdowns.
He also has 9 and 11 targets in the last 2 games.
Hopkins is clearly the dude here.
It almost seems like they are kind of pushing Garrett Graham out and pushing DeAndre Hopkins up, which is smart because Garrett Graham blows.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I saw Dan nodding. Are you in agreement with me that Hopkins is the guy that you prefer out of those two, Dan?
Yeah, I do. I said on the podcast with Laffy earlier this week that I felt like Andre Johnson's the safer option, but I don't even know if I believe that anymore. I think they're both relatively safe options with the matchup, and I think Hopkins has considerably more upside.
Yeah, because they both have, like, Bradley Fletcher and Kerry Williams are both bad. Mm-hmm. And so the only corner that you're really worried about is Brandon Boykin. But even if Hopkins moves into the slot on some plays, Boykin's very good, but Hopkins is also 5 inches taller than him. Which, I mean, I know lots of people just don't believe that size matters at all for whatever reason, but that definitely matters. Like, I was thinking about this today, and I was like, this argument doesn't exist in any other sport. Like, that size doesn't matter. Like, you would never be like, oh, well, Steph Curry can play center because he's super talented. So, like,
totally
it doesn't matter
agree.
that he's short. It's ridiculous.
Totally agree. The level of understanding of things that are so freaking basic is so behind in football. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
okay,
that thought just came to me, and now I have an awesome comeback for the next time.
Well, the whole Steph Curry playing center is not really applicable.
But that's what you're saying. When you're saying that small wide receiver,
because you're talking about a position. You're not saying that DeAndre Hopkins is going to play right tackle. Like it's just.
But being bigger, stronger, and faster matters in every sport.
Right, but what you're saying, like, it'd be saying...
You're comparing Isaiah Thomas to IC2 to...
Russell Westbrook, who is 6'4".
Right, so what I'm saying, it's not like a positional thing, as far as you can switch positions. Anyways, enough of that. I want Evan's take on Andre Johnson, because I agree with Tuttle's former take about being the safer option. There's just not a lot of wide receivers. And if they push the pace, if they he's going to get targeted, he's going to play. So, Evan, am I just crazy here for playing him in cash games?
No, I really like him, and I really like Hopkins. You know,
pick one for a cash.
I went with Andre Johnson on Thursday night.
Yes, and Evan, BFFs.
Yeah, I mean. I trust the targets a little bit more. I'm really optimistic about Hopkins. You know, I try to look at, especially in the matchups column, what wide receiver goes against what cornerback the most. But in this case, honestly, Johnson and Hopkins move around so much. They're always flipping sides that it's kind of stupid for me to try to peg that. But I would say it would be like 53% Andre Johnson against Kerry Williams and 47% against Fletcher. I consider Kerry Williams a better matchup for wide receivers, even though they're both good matchups. Again, you know, it's just kind of, it's almost not even worth talking about. They both have great matchups. Andre Johnson gets more targets. At this stage of their careers, it looks like Nuke Hopkins has more big play ability.
And more ability to score touchdowns. I don't know how Andre Johnson hasn't been a consistent touchdown. He's never had a double-digit touchdown season.
I thought this was going to be the year for Andre Johnson as a touchdown scorer because they got rid of Kubiak, who loved tight ends, and because they got rid of Matt Schaub. But that has not happened at all. So
I've never owned Andre Johnson in any seasonal league because, like, just for whatever reason, he never was able to translate his awesome ability as a wide receiver into touchdowns. So,
it's odd.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's talk about Mike Wallace though, because I like Mike Wallace is literally a player who I've just never understood the liking for. But this week he is a great play because I think Brandon Flowers is not going to play. Is that correct?
No, Flowers is playing.
Flowers is playing. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll need to go.
Jason Verrett is not playing.
Yeah, he's got a torn labrum, and Sharice Wright, their other corner, is so bad.
That's who you want Wallace to go up against.
And I think that, I mean, you know, Wallace can do it against any corner because he's faster than them, and so he can get a deep ball. And San Diego's defense right now is in shambles anyways. They're the 28th total defense by adjusted DVOA this season. Like, that's really bad. So I think Tannehill actually makes a pretty good GPP play, and just with the way wide receiver works this season or this week, he's a good play because he sees 24% of the team's passing targets and has scored 5 of their 11 receiving touchdowns.
And if you remember, it wasn't too long ago that Derek Carr shredded the Chargers pass D, and that's when they were at full strength too.
Mm-hmm. Are you on Wallace this week, Dan?
Yeah, after editing your article, you kind of convinced me. And the thing is, I mean, you mentioned it earlier with wide receiver this week. There's just kind of there's not a whole lot of good options. Where we might not consider Wallace on a normal week, but I think if you look at the matchup and consider his talent around him in the same price point, I think he becomes a really good play.
All right, I'm gonna give Silva 45 seconds to talk about Eric Decker this week and see if he is anywhere aligned close to me. And I'm assuming from that face that you're not.
No, I like Harvin out of those two.
What?
Yeah,
Does Percy Harvin even exist, Evan?
Dude, he had 9 targets last week and 4 rushing attempts in 50% of the snaps.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I just like.
How can you trust Michael Vick to even complete like 45% of his passes?
Oh,
well, Preston Parker had 2 receptions and 19 yards last week.
Total. Why are you talking about Preston Parker, man? God.
Yeah, you know what? For as much shit as I got yesterday for bringing up Decker as a decent option, we pretty much just let Preston Parker go. No,
because I'm not suggesting you play a Michael Vick led offense receiving option in cash games.
Okay, all right. Can you guys just indulge me for a second? Michael Vick is like at least pretty awesome, right? Like Michael, like
back in '99.
Yeah, he sucks now, but like I just one time I want to see him have one more vintage Michael Vick game before he goes away. Like, wouldn't that just be cool?
I've been hoping to see one of those since 2011.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just whatever.
I mean, he targeted Decker more than anybody else last week.
Yeah, because Decker's always open.
That would be the only thing that I could hang my hat on.
And like, I don't know. Like, I think that he has reasonable touchdown upside because he's against Marcus Cooper, who he scored 4 touchdowns on last year, and who isn't very good.
That's interesting.
Yeah, if you go look last year at the one game he had last year where he was like, the highest wide receiver in fantasy, all 4 of those touchdowns from Peyton Manning came directly in coverage against Marcus Cooper. Now, I don't know.
Who were they thrown from?
Yeah, and I wrote that in my article. I wrote that in my article that a lot of things have obviously changed. But like to say that Michael Vick doesn't have the arm talent is wrong. It's just that his decision making is atrocious.
I kind of like it as a GPP play, right?
Yeah. Preston Parker and then
no, not Preston Parker.
And then Decker.
Just just when we're talking about wide receivers in general, it goes like, that Dez, Calvin, Jordy here, then it goes Preston Parker, and then you have like the young guys like DeAndre Hopkins and Sammy Watkins, and then but he's like in that in between tier. Let's talk about Gronk. We forcing him in this week? I'm forcing him in this week.
Yeah.
Like,
you have to. I mean, I think he's the best. You need to get exposure to the Patriots offense. I think he's the best way to do it, obviously. That's more the reasoning for it. I'm tempted in my non-Gronk lineups. If I'm going to run non-Gronk lineups, I'm tempted in both your guys' boy. Travis Kelce's really starting to kind of pull on my heartstrings here. I'll let you guys talk about it.
There are 3 tight end options this week, I think. Gronk, Kelce, and I think Larry Donnell.
Oh, see, I wrote Dwayne Allen was the third guy that I wrote.
He's so lightly targeted, Dave.
Yeah, I don't feel super confident about it. But yeah, I think I'm definitely running Kelce and Gronk out there. But like, so let me put it this way: if Gronkowski was like, if they had multi-position eligibility and you could play him at wide receiver, wouldn't he be the top wide receiver play this week? Pretty much, just based off the way matchups are coming out.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so like the fact that you get to play him at tight end is like sort of a huge advantage, and you know that just based off the fact that he's tight end, that your opponents, they're like, people really fall into fear in setting their daily fantasy lineups, so they want to buy into safety, so they'll get a medium priced tight end who like Larry Donnell, and they'll pay up for Antonio Brown or someone who doesn't have like a really great matchup just because that's like a name that they recognize. So I think getting Gronkowski in your lineup is a huge edge this week.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, because your wide receiver pickings are not great at the top, you may as well pay for the big tight end, who gives you 2 touchdown upside.
Someone just said that they like Julius more than Gronk. That just seems insane to me. I mean, Julius Thomas what does he have, the 4th most targets on his team? Like, I know that he's scored a bunch of touchdowns, but he's basically a goal line running back at this point.
Yeah, he's touchdown dependent. There's a huge price difference on DraftKings where I'm still not sold that Julius would be anywhere near a better play than Gronk. But if you want to try to justify you playing JT over Gronk on DraftKings because of the $2,000 difference, so be it.
But you don't
with the
need
$100, you don't. But with a $100 difference on FanDuel, just no.
There's a kind of a myth that Julius Thomas is like a superstar athlete.
Nope.
But he's about above average.
He is like, he's kind of like a little bit better than he's like 0.15 faster in the 40 than Larry Donnell. Like that, but like a lot of their other workout numbers are really similar.
And Larry Donnell was heavier, I think.
Yeah, I wrote an article last year after like that first game against the Ravens when he had 2 touchdowns, and I really went to look at it, and I was expecting him to be a lot more athletic than he was. Now, obviously, he has, the best quarterback in football throwing to him, and of course he could go out and have a 2 touchdown game, but on FanDuel, it's not really a conversation. Like, you're playing Rob Gronkowski, and I just feel like you don't need that extra 2K on DraftKings this week.
Well, it'll be interesting to see because he's a free agent in the offseason. So will some other team go overpay for Julius Thomas because of all the numbers that he put up with Peyton Manning? That'll be interesting to see. Anyways, I'm loving Ronnie Hillman this week. What do you guys think?
I'll let Tuttle talk about him because like I have a weird thing with Ronnie Hillman too, where like I used to be a really avid listener of the Football Guys podcast, and Cecil Lammey 2 years ago was all over him, and I had him on a bunch of my seasonal teams, and he was terrible. So like I have a kind of a weird blind spot with him.
I was almost upset when reading Evan's column this week because I too love Ronnie Hillman, and I was kind of hoping that Evan would talk me back down off the Ronnie Hillman ledge. But the setup's good, and the thing that Evan mentions in his article and Sean mentions in his article for us is kind of how Belichick game plans, obviously, to shut Peyton Manning down. And Evan can elaborate more on it, but I mean, I'm sure you guys remember the explosion last year by No. Sean Moreno against the Patriots. You could very well see something like that out of Hillman this year just because of the game plan.
Yeah, things that Rex Ryan and Belichick have done in the past are to play coverage, drop a bunch of guys into coverage against Peyton Manning, and they will, let the running game go to work. And Peyton Manning will kind of cooperate. I mean, he will, because he's a guy who at the line of scrimmage he makes his decisions at the line of scrimmage. And so when he sees a favorable run look, he'll check into a run. And I think this is a great game for Ronnie Hillman. Some people will be worried that Juwan Thompson vultured 2 touchdowns last week, but they both came on fullback dives. It's not like they pulled out Ronnie Hillman out of the game. Juwan Thompson was lined up at fullback, and it was almost like I mean, I don't know because I can't hear what they're saying, but it could have just been a decision made by Peyton Manning at the line of scrimmage or just a great play call or whatever. The week before that, Ronnie Hillman scored a touchdown at the goal line. So, I mean, I don't think that they're just going to always go away from him at the goal line. The only concern that I have with Ronnie Hillman this week, and I like to consider all possibilities of what might happen. I think that the highest likelihood is that, he goes, 24 carries for 150 some yards and, maybe a touchdown or two. I think that is a real possibility for him. I also think that, though, that there is a possibility that Belichick does not do what we anticipate him doing, and because of the weather that is expected,
that's the thing.
Yeah, they play a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. They don't have their pass rusher, Chandler Jones, so I don't know that it's just the weather might add an element to it that we don't anticipate. But I love Ronnie Hillman as a GPP play, and I think he's still pretty safe in cash games.
Did you guys see Belichick's little rant on meteorologists today? Yeah. It was basically a 3-minute rant saying how inaccurate meteorologists are, and basically you can't factor any of that in until maybe an hour or so before game time. So obviously he's not really. I mean,
or he's reverse trolling.
Yeah, it could be reverse.
He totally could be doing that. I mean, and I kind of feel bad for meteorologists because, about all the stuff that I get wrong, every single week. I mean,
have you guys read Nate Silver's book? That's the genesis of Nate Silver's book was how shitty meteorologists are at their jobs.
Oh.
So
whatever.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna pain me to say it, but if I was Belichick, who are the 2 players on the Patriots offense that don't scare you at all?
On the Patriots or Broncos?
On the Broncos offense, who don't scare you? It's Sanders and Welker that are dependent on their quarterback. I would game plan around stopping.
I guarantee you he doesn't think like that about Sanders. I guarantee you he thinks that Sanders is dangerous as shit.
I don't know, because they had a chance to sign him for a really cheap tag and then chose not to. Because they had him on the restricted free agency.
They did sign him, and then the Steelers matched, right?
But it was 3 years, like $6 million though.
It was a 1-year deal for like $2.5 million.
1.5?
They tried to get him, dude. They tried to get Emmanuel Sanders. I guarantee you they think that he's dangerous. Davis, look, man, I missed on Emmanuel Sanders before the season. He's small.
I think he's a fine player. He's
small. He's really dangerous in their offense.
Yeah, of course he is. I'm not suggesting that. I'm saying if I was a defensive coordinator, the guys that I would be fine getting to their spots on the field would be Welker and Sanders.
I think that they're going to put Revis on Sanders.
Really?
Yes. And Brandon Browner will mostly go against Demaryius Thomas.
If that is in fact what happens, then all of the Demaryius Thomas in the Millie Maker. Like I'll make 20 Demaryius Thomas teams.
I put in some Demaryius. I mean, I don't know. I mean, am I crazy? What do you think, Tuttle?
I honestly haven't looked at the matchup that closely to know to really speculate on how they're going to work the personnel. It seems possibly crazy, but I mean, you've looked at it much closer than I have.
Brandon Browner is 6'4", 221 pounds.
Yeah, he's closer to Demaryius' size, but in terms of technique, Demaryius will win against him. What?
But Sanders would crush Brandon Browner.
Well, I'm not going to get into this with you because I disagree. I think Sanders is a fine player, but he's still averaging 15 touchdowns per career. Like he's okay.
He's really, really dangerous in their offense. Really, really dangerous.
I won't argue at that point, but I don't know. It's tilting for me because Peyton Manning can just make players look so much better than their baseline. So I don't know.
Yeah, but he's really quick and he can get over the top.
Yeah, I don't know. Browner's not slow.
He's 6'4", 221, man.
I've seen some things from Sanders that make me think that my original projection of him was wrong, but just because yards are replaceable in the NFL and touchdowns aren't, and despite having a 3-touchdown game, he's still not an elite, touchdown scorer. I don't know.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that Belichick thinks like you, though.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
He may think that yards matter. And I mean, Emmanuel Sanders is a chunk play wide receiver in their offense.
We know that Belichick doesn't think that yards matter because in years past, he has ran bend but that don't break defenses that let other teams get yards but then focus on red zone defense. And he's made statements to the media numerous times that he doesn't care how many yards the other team has. He cares about how many points they have.
Okay, I mean that's a good argument.
So, I don't know. People are just so quick to jump on me for having these opinions that they don't agree with. But I really feel like this sets up. And if your estimation ends up being correct, then I think Demaryius is a great play against Browner.
This is what I think ends up happening. Realistically, I think that Darrelle Revis will play strictly left cornerback. I think that Brandon Browner will play strictly right cornerback. That's what he's done his entire career. The only time that the Patriots have really used Darrelle Revis to shadow an opposing number one was against Sammy Watkins, I believe.
Yeah, which would indicate...
They've left him at left cornerback most of the season. And that's where Emmanuel Sanders will run 60-65% of the time. And Demaryius Thomas will run 60% of the time against the right corner.
Yeah.
And then they'll have Kyle Arrington in the slot, and they also have Alfonso Dennard, who is a press corner. They could stick Alfonso Dennard on Emmanuel Sanders and then use Revis against Demaryius. That would be one thing that they could do.
Well, what's frustrating me about this game from constructing Millionaire Maker teams is this. It has such an awesome total, right? The 55 over-under is awesome.
Right.
But just looking at the way both of the defenses are set up, it's really hard to figure out who the guys scoring the touchdowns are going to be.
Hillman and Gronkowski.
Yeah, and that's...
move on.
Yeah, that's fine. Evan, were we boring you? Dan, did you have to go do something else because we were boring you?
No, my internet disconnected.
Yeah.
Speaking of, Davis, your internet is looking awesome.
My Ethernet cord is plugged in, and I've upgraded our internet twice since we moved in, so I don't know what else you want me to do. We're paying $150.
I want to talk about quarterbacks because
let's do it.
Are you guys taking quarterbacks from this game then? Are you still Tom Brady, Davis?
Yeah, I'm Brady and Kaepernick are my guys this week, and I know Evan is going to tell me how good Denver's defense is right now.
I mean, but have you ever read Jonathan Bales?
Yes,
don't start quarterbacks with in games where the winds are going to be 40 miles an hour.
Yeah, and I won't if that ends up being the case.
Especially when they're 38 years old or 37 or whatever.
That line has started to move down significantly too.
Okay,
I believe it started
55 to 53.5.
Yeah, I think it was even possibly at 56 at some places to start, and yeah, it's down to 53.5, 53.
Yeah.
So it's still moving down. That's something to monitor for sure.
Well, if I wake up Sunday morning and I see that those forecasts are holding true, then I'll just make a quick switch to Kaepernick. That's.
See, I'm gonna let you argue Kaepernick, and then I want Evan to argue my quarterback for me because I have a feeling he's potentially on my side. Maybe not as a cash game play, but Carson Palmer I would take over Kaepernick.
You're never going to get me to argue against Carson Palmer. I love Carson Palmer, but Kaepernick faces the worst defense in terms of adjusted DVOA for pass defense. So that right there sets him up as a great play. Kaepernick always adds a little bit of upside with his legs. It's a divisional game. They're not even in first place in their division right now. So these wins definitely matter. And just part of the cool thing about Kaepernick is that the way their offense works is you don't have to pair him with any of these wide receivers. You don't have to play Michael Crabtree. You don't have to play Anquan Bolden. So it sort of lets you move wherever you want with the rest of your lineup. And Yeah, I don't know. I feel like he's sort of it's sort of a boring play because you're just like it's literally paint by the numbers like fantasy playing. You're like, who has the absolute worst defense against pass? Oh, it's the Rams. Oh, Colin Kaepernick. He's okay. I'll play Colin Kaepernick. I don't know. I'm not huge on him. I don't really like any of the options at quarterback this week because a lot of them have warts. But I'll let you guys.
I can't believe that you don't like Russell Wilson, Davis.
Bro, I like Russell Wilson. I like Russell Wilson every week, though. Like people get sick of me just regurgitating the same players every week.
Right, but why are you talking about Kaepernick when you can talk about Russell Wilson?
Well, part of it is that I don't have a great feel for Pete Carroll's play calling in terms of what he'll do when they're up by how X many points, because I do think the Raiders have the worst roster in the NFL by really any stretch of the imagination. I think they're even worse than Tampa. So I don't know how much work Russ will do in the second half. And I think the Rams, while not being very good, I also think the 49ers aren't very good. So I think that game will require more out of Kaepernick.
Have we seen a team total lower than 14 this year? That's what the Raiders are at right now.
I know. That was amazing.
That's crazy.
That was amazing just to look at that on a sheet of paper.
Mm-hmm.
A 43-point over-under with a team favored by 15. It actually moved to 14.5, it looks like. But still, I mean, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this game kind of screams Seattle D and Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I'm not going to say Wilson's not a good play because he obviously is, but that would basically be the risk in Wilson is that it's a Marshawn Lynch and Seattle D game.
Yep. One thing to note is that Carlos Rogers is the Raiders slot corner, and he will not play. And Doug Baldwin primarily goes against slot. He primarily runs in the slot, so that helps him a little bit. If you want to do a Russell Wilson, Doug Baldwin stack, I also still like the Jermaine Kearse Russell Wilson stack, even though it was a nightmare last week.
All right, talk about Palmer, Dan. Do your thing.
I just feel like he's a really safe option with pretty high upside at the same time.
Do it without the word "feel," please. None of that intuition crap, man.
Well, he's. I feel that way based on stats. My feeling is formed because of the statistics that he has shown through the 3 games since he's been healthy. I mean, he's thrown 250 plus yards, 2 touchdowns in the 3 games he's been healthy, and that seems to be more or less his. I don't want to say floor because he could obviously go worse than that, but that seems to be a relatively safe projection for him. This week would be about 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, but I think he still has pretty solid upside. And you can talk to me a little bit about the Cowboys defense because I know it's your team, but I'm still not completely sold that the Cowboys defense.
They're not very good. Like it was a thing where the offense and the defense were working together to make it work. But if Tony Romo is not playing or plays and is ineffective and is not completing easy passes and the Cowboys offense can't get in rhythm, it's going to be a long day for that defense because just a lot of their players are not above replacement level, and that's really all there is to it. Like, I know that they've won some games and they've been okay, but Colt McCoy just went out and went 25 of 30 against them. Like, it's not that they were good. Like, they were still giving up the most yards per play coming into the Washington game. I don't know. I haven't looked this week, but like it was just the way in which the team was working. So I like Palmer just fine this week.
Well, right, and the same effect has been had on the Colts defense. People start to think that they're good, but the reason that they have good numbers or respectable numbers is because of their time of possession, and that's the same deal with the Cowboys. I mean, the defense is not good. It doesn't matter what the Cowboys fans say on Twitter. Just block them. They don't have a good defense.
They don't. So I'll say this: if Brandon Weeden is the starting quarterback this week for my Dallas Cowboys, fire up your Arizona Cardinals D, fire up your Andre Ellingtons, fire up your Carson Palmer. It's going to be bad. It is going to be bad.
Fire up the Des Bryants for the old connection. Yes or no?
Oh man, dude, that is narrative.
Yo, they didn't play together, by the way. It was
They didn't?
no, it was him and
No,
Blackman.
no.
Oh yeah. It was.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Damn. You want to hear a crazy stat? You want to hear a crazy stat about?
I mean,
this?
they were on the same team together, but I don't think they played a full season together. But sorry, go ahead, David. Sorry.
I'm gonna pull up my spreadsheet here, but I believe the percentage of touchdowns that Dez Bryant caught his senior season for Oklahoma State, or his final season, I don't think he was a senior, was, I believe, 83% of his team's touchdowns. So that's a pretty crazy number.
It's almost as good as Larry Donnell at Grambling State.
Dude, when I read that in Matt Friedman's article, I was like, no way. Like, that is nuts, dude. 100% of the touchdowns, but then again, it is Grambling State. Yeah, but if that's a good question. If Whedon plays, what do you guys think about Dez? Because he obviously has the nice matchup with Patrick Peterson this week, who's just been bad this year. What do you guys think about that if Whedon plays? Because they'll probably be down if Whedon plays.
I like it. I think Dez is. I mean, he's always going to be a decent option. It doesn't matter necessarily who's throwing to him, and I think it simplifies the offense. Would be the. You might say Whedon's not as good of a quarterback. He obviously isn't, but the thing is that the offense is going to be completely simplified. So Bryant might just get more looks because of that. He's going to be the first option. Whedon's going to kind of zone in on him a little more than possibly Romo would. So I think he's a solid play this week, no matter who's quarterbacking.
That's one of the things that did in Brandon Whedon, is that he would zone in on one wide receiver in Cleveland.
And that was when it was Josh Gordon, it was okay. When it was anyone else, it was very much not.
Yeah. He and also we saw him on Monday night. He threw at Dez twice in the red zone. Freaking 4.640 running Breland broke them both up. That sucked, but that actually cost me a game too. If he would have caught one of those TDs, I would have beat Mike Clay in a game.
Dude,
but
Breland's kind of good, right?
I mean, he was 95th of 107 in PFF's ratings before that game.
Okay, well, very much never mind that. I had no idea.
But it's just a reminder that people will see a guy play in one game and then they'll think he's good, you know.
Yeah. I saw Kevin Durant tweeting about how good he was, so that was what tipped me off. All right, who else do we need to talk about? Anybody? Do either one of you guys like Alfred Morris this week against Minnesota? With RG3 coming back?
I mean, I'm on other dudes, but I like it.
Yeah, he's just someone who I've gotten some questions about on Twitter.
Yeah, I like it too. I mean, Jeremy Hill's 100 more on DraftKings, and Ronnie Hillman's 400 more on FanDuel. So those are guys I'd go to 99 out of 100 times over Alfred Morris, but I don't mind it.
Word. Who else do you like, Evan, that we haven't talked about?
Let me see. I like Demarius against Browner.
So Jimmy Smith is out this week too, right, for the Ravens?
Yeah.
So do you like Antonio Brown?
I mean, I don't think that affects Antonio Brown at all because, they don't line him up at X receiver and have him run against Jimmy Smith. I mean, he would move all around anyways.
Okay.
I want them to. Just for one game, I want Antonio Brown to play the same role as Demaryius Thomas and see what happens. I don't know what would happen. I don't know. I have no conception for how good Antonio Brown is at football at all.
He's awesome. He catches everything.
He is awesome. I've never been anti Antonio Brown ever. You will not find anything I've ever written that was like Antonio Brown is not a good football player. I think people think that he's something he's not because he is so consistent. Like, people think he's like a top 5 NFL wide receiver, and I disagree with that. But
I think it's worth asking the question or pondering whether he would be Kendall Wright if his quarterbacks were Jake Locker and Zach Mettenberger.
Yeah, I think that is a reasonable assessment, but I don't. Like, we'll never see that scenario, right? Like, we'll never get to see that because the Steelers organization has basically said like you're the dude here. So I don't know. Like he's obviously like taken years off my life because people choose to antagonize me with him on Twitter all the time. But I've played him before. I've written him up before. He's fine. But I also like nothing about this game and the line and the game script that normally happens between Baltimore and Pittsburgh says that he's a great play.
So if you're spending on receiver, then are you going Jeremy Maclin? I know you wrote him up. Is that your high end guy that you'd be spending on?
I mean, I would rather play Maclin, but that could easily look stupid. But Maclin would be the guy if I was really paying up for somebody. I think like he has just been ridiculous this year, and I think part of it is the fact that he's playing a weird hybrid role of the role that he played last year, and he's playing in Deshaun Jackson's role because they don't feel comfortable handing off any real. They haven't given any real responsibility to Jordan Matthews yet, and when that happens, things will change for Maclin's target volume and stuff. But that just hasn't happened yet.
I still can't believe how little they've used Ertz.
That's weird too. Yeah.
I can't believe it. I feel like they're they're one of the worst red zone teams in the NFL. How are you not using your Ertz more?
I mean, he's had to block a lot. I know because their line has been bad. Him and Selleck have just done a ton of blocking. I don't know. I think here's something that's definitely true. Some of the shine has fallen off the Chip Kelly apple. I think. I don't know. Do you agree with that, Evan?
I don't know. There has still been so much adversity that they face, especially on the O-line, that it's hard to say that accurately. We could talk about that after the season.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think they've done. Not that I don't think he's a great coach, but he's doing stuff like not going for it on 4th and inches and stuff. Like he's just doing things that were not typical of what he did in college.
Okay.
The NFL will take everything you love and make it gross.
How about LaShawn McCoy?
I love him this week.
Mm-hmm.
Tuttle, you too?
Yep. Yeah. Who would you rather play? I think FanDuel it's a little more complicated. Would you play Hillman or McCoy? I think McCoy's $600 more than Hillman. That's the decision I'm struggling with right now. Like on DraftKings, LaShawn McCoy's $5,200. He's in my lineup, moving on to the next spot. But I think it's a decision on FanDuel. It's a tough one.
I think I would go McCoy.
Do you think Hillman's not legit, Davis? What do you think about Hillman?
I think that he is playing with a quarterback that has made every one of his running backs an RB1. So I don't think it matters if he's legit or not. But I just think McCoy is most definitely very legit and is up against the 19th overall rush defense by adjusted DVOA, and they're favorites in this game, and he's LaShawn McCoy.
New England's 28th. For what it's worth, adjusted DVOA rush defense.
Yeah, New England's defense is like it's like 6 paper bags and Revis and Browner and whoever they have at safety. Like their interior, their front seven has been demolished by injuries.
It also was running like low for a little bit, and then like it fell off a cliff when they lost Gerard Mayo 2 weeks ago.
And what, they don't have Chandler Jones too, correct?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, it's just I don't know. I definitely don't want to be on record as saying that Ronnie Hillman isn't a good play this week, but in my lineups, I would play McCoy instead.
Makes sense. I think that LaShawn McCoy is going to start going nuts like real soon. How about defenses?
I like the Browns, and I like the Chiefs too, because I know that I was talking about Decker earlier, but I wrote up in my column that just Vic can go out there and just get. Well, something that Vic does too is he takes a ton of sacks and he tries to keep the play alive too much, and that results in turnovers a lot. Yeah, and obviously Seattle. Like Seattle is unequivocally.
Seattle Bengals. I mean, it's. I think it's a week to spend up on defense.
Yeah, there's not like one low price defense that you're like, cool. This, and you don't, because you don't have to.
Cleveland is the only defense I feel like is somewhat decently priced, right?
Yeah,
4,800.
4,800.
Yeah.
But there's no one that jumped out to me like last week that it was like the Dolphins, you just had to play them. Like you just did. There was not really an option to do anything else. But this week on like the Bengals aren't a good defense this year, but they're still playing the Jaguars. So
Tuttle, do you have any Michael Floyd?
I do.
Roughly all the Michael Floyd.
Really?
Wow. In the vicinity of all of it, huh?
It's around there.
There's not very much of it to go around, so.
Yeah, there's not. I think everyone's selling off their stock from last week, like a penny stock.
I'll take it.
I know. I got asked today if if some guy should drop Michael Floyd for Travaris Cadet.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You mean?
See, I mean, I don't worry about percentages or ownership percentages when I'm constructing my rosters. But if that's something you want to take into account, it's all the more reasoning to play Michael Floyd. You guys have both mentioned the stat of what 3 out of the 4 games Palmer has thrown. He's had over 100 yards or a touchdown. Last week was really an outlier. Good.
Also, if he catches that flea flicker and just runs it into the end zone, like he normally, like if that play just is a success, nobody's bitching. Nobody. So I don't know. Like he plays a high volatility role though.
Who was the John Brown comp earlier this week after the game on Sunday?
Marvin Harrison.
Marvin Harrison. Yes.
John Brown is even smaller than Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, well, Marvin Harrison's not even good. So.
What? Marvin Harrison is a Hall of Famer, dude.
Well,
No, that sounded like something that Davis would say, though.
Well, this is something that's tilting to me about Marvin Harrison is that Marvin Harrison is the all-time GOAT, but Demaryius Thomas is a product of Peyton Manning. Like, it's like that dichotomy where, like, people want to be like, oh, my God, Marvin Harrison is amazing. How, like, oh, so good. But if Demaryius was in another offense, he wouldn't be as good.
Yeah. Well.
Demaryius would destroy if he was even in an offense with a bad quarterback and they didn't have a whole lot of other weapons, he would put up amazing numbers still.
In my opinion, he's the best wide receiver in football, and I think a lot of that is bared out this year, but whatevs.
Whatevs is right. Anything else? Any daunting topics we need to cover before we sign off for this Halloween
Just
edition?
like how much Preston Parker is too much? Like, is he like 75% of teams, or is he like Jerick McKinnon, like 100% of teams type guy?
I'm just glad we don't have to deal with. I'm just glad we don't have to deal with Colt McCoy's tight end this week and people telling other people to play him over Gronkowski. I mean, come on.
If Parker is even 3% owned, I will blame that on Tuttle moving the needle.
Oh, I no way I have that much pull, especially when it comes to a guy like Preston Parker.
Well,
dude, if I see him on any teams like of guys that I'm up against on FanDuel, like in head-to-heads this week, I'm just gonna laugh.
Oh, it's an absolutely horrible head-to-head play, but.
Hey, yeah. Davis, do you want to recant your thoughts on Randall Cobb?
No, why? Like I don't. Why? How has it just become this thing that like variance happens and then all of a sudden like correlations are wrong?
Okay, so you don't.
All of a sudden, mathematical correlations just don't matter in the world.
Okay, so all you had to say was no.
I'm going to issue an open invitation to everyone who's listening to this show right now. Go to your computer, open up Microsoft Excel. I want you to go to ProFootballReference.com and go to the gameplay finder, set it to passing, and look at all the receiving touchdowns and the leaders for the last 5 years. Then go down and manually copy their weight and run a correlation between receiving touchdowns scored, and pass catcher weight. And if you don't find anything, that's fine. I've done this before, and it's a real fact that exists in the scientific world. So, like, I don't care about your examples that you show me because science is on my side.
Hashtag science.
Hashtag Cam Newton. All right. Well, I would respond to that, but all I heard was Blog Talk Radio. So that will do it for today's show. Thank you to Evan Silva from rotoworld.com, Davis Maddock from FantasyInsiders.com, and Dan Gasper, aka Mr. Tuttle, from FantasyInsiders.com. This is the Fantasy Insiders Daily Fantasy NFL show, sponsored by Fantasy Elite, the app that you can get in the App Store. My name is Davis Maddox. Swag Brez will be on tonight, 10 p.m. Central Time, 11 Eastern. Rumor has it that Jordan Case is going to be wearing something very skimpy for the show tonight. So
You wish, David.
that's definitely going to happen. And so college football show tonight, and then we'll see you on Sunday morning at 12 p.m. Eastern for a little 30-minute Q&A sesh that we like to have. NBA starts in 52 minutes, so we'll get to that. And good luck to everybody this weekend. And this is a crazy time in DFS. It's a good time to play. So if you're not already signed up to be a premium member, do so. We will see you later. Thanks, guys.